If you're trying to feel anything but despair about kind of the trajectory that the world is heading in right now, one of the best things to avoid is going down the road of optimism. Optimism in itself is not a bad thing. It's really good to look for the good in things. But a lot of people who think of themselves as optimists spend so much time looking for the silver lining that they never actually pay attention to the cloud. This is the reason that if you're going to talk about reorienting yourself towards the world, I think it's better to go with hope than it is with optimism. So to speak on the distinction between the two, I'm actually going to turn to someone else because he's way more qualified than I am to talk about it. Vaclav Havel. If you're not aware of him, he was a playwright and a dissident in the communist era. He actually was imprisoned multiple times, but when the wall fell and the Soviet bloc collapsed, he ended up being elected the first president of free Czechoslovakia before that split in two, and then he was the first president of the Czech Republic. It's hard to remember this now, but back in the 70s and 80s, for people that were actually dissenting in Soviet bloc countries, it didn't look like that was ever going to come to an end. It just looked like it was always going to be this massive, dominant, oppressive state. And so Havel, when he was writing about hope in the 80s, he didn't realize he was 3 years away from being president. But here's the thing that he has to say about hope. The kind of hope I often think about, especially in situations that are particularly hopeless, such as prison, I understand above all as a state of mind, not a state of the world. Either we have hope within us or we don't. It is a dimension of the soul. It's not essentially dependent on some particular observation of the world or estimate of the situation. Hope is not prognostication. It is an orientation of the spirit, an orientation of the heart. It transcends the world that is immediately experienced and is anchored somewhere beyond its horizons. Hope in this deep and powerful sense is not the same as joy that things are going well or willingness to invest in enterprises that are obviously headed for early success, but rather an ability to work for something because it is good, not just because it stands a chance to succeed. The more unpropitious the situation in which we demonstrate hope, the deeper that hope is. Hope is definitely not the same thing as optimism. It is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out. In short, I think that the deepest and most important form of hope, the only one that can keep us above water and urge us to good works, and the only true source of the breathtaking dimension of the human spirit and its efforts, is something we get, as it were, from elsewhere. It is also this hope, above all, which gives us the strength to live and continually try new things, even in conditions that seem as hopeless as ours do, here and now. You can find a lot more about Havel in Rebecca Solnit's amazing book, Hope in the Dark. If you want more hope and anti-despair content, give me a follow.